First came silence on land and thunder beneath the waves. The continents were bare stones scraped by wind and rain. But the seas already teemed with eyes, jaws, armor, and motion. Strange fins flickered through green water older than forests. Nothing yet walked here, breathed here, or nested in sunlight. So how did ocean life dare the empty shore? The answer was not one leap, but countless experiments. Each tide pool became a frontier, each drought a test. Over millions of years, bodies learned the grammar of land. And eventually, the planet answered with footsteps. For most of Earth's history, life stayed underwater. There, buoyancy softened gravity's pull. Water held bodies up. It also delivered food, oxygen, and shelter. Land offered none of that. It was bright, dry, and dangerous. No soil covered the rock. No grasses waved. No birds called overhead. Only microbial films darkened some surfaces. They clung where spray and moisture lingered. Even so, the coastline tempted life. Sunlight was strong, and competition sometimes weaker. Shallow water changed quickly. Temperature swung, oxygen dropped, and pools vanished. Anything surviving there needed flexibility. That pressure became evolution's quiet engine. Long before vertebrates arrived, other pioneers tested the margins. They were small, patient, and ancient. Bacteria and algae spread across damp ground. Fungi likely helped break bare rock. Together, they began making proto-soils. Thin films trapped minerals and held water. That changed everything slowly. Land became less hostile, one microscopic layer at a time. Plants were among the next revolutionaries. Their earliest forms stayed low and simple. They had no flowers, no seeds, and no true wood. But they had a crucial gift. They could hold sunlight in place. Tiny stems rose beside wet edges. Rhizoids anchored them against washing water. Soon, green patches spread beyond splash zones. The continents will begin to blush. Plants altered air and ground together. They trapped carbon and released oxygen. Their tissues also created litter. Dead matter fanned fungal webs and future soils. Once plants arrived, animals could follow. Land finally held food worth chasing. The first animal invaders were likely arthropods. Their exoskeletons already resisted drying. Some may have been millipede relatives. Others resembled scorpions without their later drama. They did not conquer mountains first. They explored damp margins close to safety. Every trip ashore remained temporary. Retreat to water was still the rule. Yet even brief visits mattered. Evolution remembers repeated success. Legs that once pushed along bottoms gained new purpose. They could brace against mud. Air held more oxygen than warm shallows sometimes did. A surface gulp could save energy. That mattered during drought. It mattered inside stagnant, weedy pools. Here, another lineage faced the same challenge. Fishes in shrinking waters needed options. Most would remain fish forever. A few carried unusual equipment. Their fins were thick and muscular. Bones inside them already formed a sturdy inner framework. These were lobe-finned fishes. Today, only lungfish and coelacanths remain. But in the Devonian, their kind was broader. Some hunted in weed-choked shallows. Shallow habitats rewarded maneuverability. A rigid open ocean body was less useful there. Mud, roots, and fallen stems blocked easy swimming. Punning and propping suddenly helped. Some fishes also possessed lungs or lung-like sacs. Those organs were not a land invention. They first evolved for water. Breathing air solved aquatic problems before terrestrial ones. That is evolution's signature. Old structures find startling new jobs. A swim bladder can regulate buoyancy. In some lineages, related tissues handled breathing. Skulls changed too. Certain bones loosened, giving the head more independence. That mattered in shallow ambush hunting. A neck, even a partial one, widened opportunity. Ribs grew stronger in some forms. Bodies needed support outside easy buoyant water. Wrist-like joints did not appear overnight. They emerged through many intermediate shapes. Each generation nudged the pattern. Fins became better props, then better paddles. No creature aimed for the future. Natural selection simply favored whatever worked immediately. By the late Devonian, shorelines had transformed. Rivers braided through the first real forests. Lycopsids and early ferns crowded wet ground. Insects and arachnids moved through shadows. Decaying plants thickened the mud. Fallen trunks created labyrinths of cover. Predators lurked in water channels. Safety on land suddenly looked more attractive. But land demanded payment. Bodies dried quickly, and gravity never rested. Eyes had to function in air. Ears would eventually need new solutions too. Skin that worked underwater lost moisture fast. Eggs especially faced a brutal problem. Early tetrapods still reproduced in water. In that sense, they never fully escaped it. The famous transition was gradual. Shore and swamp remained their true homeland. One name often appears here, Tiktaalik. It lived about 375 million years ago. Tiktaalik was not the first on land. It was a spectacular window into transition. Its spins contain humerus, radius, and ulna. The joints could likely prop its front end. Its skull was flat and broad. Eyes sat high, watching above shallow water. And crucially, it had a mobile neck. Most fishes still did not. That combination feels uncannily familiar. Not quite fish, not quite walker. Scientists call such forms Ichthyostelians. They sit close to the tetrapod threshold. They reveal branching possibilities, not a marching ladder. Evolution is a bush, never a staircase. Other fossils push the story further. Trackways may hint at early walkers before some famous skeletons. That reminds us to stay humble. Fossils preserve moments, never the whole film. Then come animals with true digits. Acanthostega and Ichthyostega are among the best known. Their limbs ended in toes, yet they still belonged partly to water. Acanthostega probably swam better than it strode. Its anatomy suggests an aquatic lifestyle. Ichthyostega may have managed stronger hauling, but even it was no modern amphibian. Their shoulders and hips were changing fast. Vertebral columns were learning to bear weight. Hands and feet were not for sprinting. They were for leverage in cluttered shallows. Imagine the movement. A body heaves forward, then pauses, breathing humid air. Every step is awkward. Every pause is a victory over an alien surface. Mud receives the first true footprints. The shoreline keeps their brief secret. No audience watches this moment. No trumpet announces its significance. Yet from such hesitant motions came salamanders, crocodiles, birds, and us, entire futures balanced on soggy ground. The first walkers did not replace the seas. They carried the sea within them. Their blood chemistry, embryos, and skeletons told that story. Ancestry never truly disappears. Even today our limbs echo fins. Our embryos briefly rehearse much older chapters. But the path forward stayed difficult. Devonian ecosystems were unstable and often harsh. There were droughts and floods. Oxygen levels changed and habitats fragmented. Some transition lineages vanished entirely. Success was never guaranteed. Mass extinctions later pruned many branches. The survivors were simply the branches still growing. What helped them persist? Flexible lungs, stronger limbs, and behavior tuned to wetlands. Behavior matters in evolution. Choosing shade, timing movement, and seeking water can change survival. So can development. Small shifts in growth can reorganize whole bodies. Genes did not invent new material from nothing. They modified ancient patterns already present. Fins and limbs share deep developmental roots. The blueprint changed, then unfolded differently. Skulls shortened in some descendants. Necks lengthened and senses reoriented upward. Rib cages stiffened. Pectoral girdles separated further from the skull. Step by step, water's cradle loosened, not suddenly but irreversibly. Would you survive one tide cycle here? Tell me below and be honest. Could you cross the steaming mud, or would the ancient shallows pull you back? And which pioneer amazes you most? The air-breathing fish or the first true toes? After the Devonian came deeper colonization, wetlands spread and tetrapods diversified. Some remained semi-aquatic hunters. Others ventured farther through fern-draped lowlands. The Carboniferous world was lush and humid. Giant horsetails towered over dark channels. Insects buzzed through thick air. Dragonflies grew immense where oxygen ran high. Tetrapod feet pressed richer soils now. The land no longer felt quite empty. Still, reproduction chained many species to water. Eggs without shells dried too easily. That barrier mattered as much as limbs. A walker tied to ponds remains half captive. Later, the amniotic egg changed the equation. Embryos carried their own watery world. Now vertebrates could breed away from pools. Inland journeys suddenly became possible. This happened after the first crawl ashore, but it completed the escape. From there, two grand lineages flourished. One would lead toward amphibians, one toward amniotes. Amniotes eventually produced reptiles, dinosaurs, birds, and mammals. Amphibians kept closer ties to ancient wetlands. So the shoreline never lost its importance. It was an evolutionary doorway, not a destination. Many crossings happened there. Plants, arthropods, vertebrates, and countless microbes each made their own passage. No single hero conquered land alone. Entire ecosystems assembled the victory together. Plants stabilized sediment. Fungi recycled nutrients, and invertebrates processed decay. Those changes fed rivers and coastlines back again. Land and sea co-created each other. That is the deeper wonder. Evolution is interaction, not isolation. A fin becomes a limb because worlds overlap. Pressure meets possibility, and bodies negotiate. Even failure mattered. Unsuccessful experiments still mapped the edges of what life could do. Most species left no descendants, yet they still shaped the path for others. When we study a bone, we study a compromise. Strength traded against weight, reach against flexibility. When we study a footprint, we glimpse behavior. A pause, a turn, a cautious decision. And when rock preserves a shoreline, it preserves weather. Wind, drought, flood, and season become invisible co-authors. That is why paleontology reads like detective work. The clues are real but incomplete. Scientists compare anatomy, sediments, chemistry, and trackways. Then they test which story fits best. Sometimes new fossils rearrange the picture. Certainty narrows, then opens again. That uncertainty is not weakness. It is how science stays honest. We know life came ashore in stages. We still debate exactly how many routes. We know lungs and limbs matter deeply. We still argue over sequence and emphasis. But the broad story stands firm. Ocean creatures transformed, and continents answered. The proof surrounds us. Every frog, lizard, wolf, and child carries it. Our species arrived unimaginably late. By then, shorelines had been experimenting for hundreds of millions of years. We call that age ancient. To Earth, it is the long beginning. The ground beneath your feet has memory. Once, it waited for the first hesitant steps. The sea still remembers too. Our bodies taste faintly of that inheritance. So tell me below, could you face that shoreline, or would you stay in the water? Subscribe and ring the bell. There are more journeys into the lost worlds before us. Because every forest, feather, and hand began somewhere stranger, somewhere tidal, breathless and brave. Before us came fins in mud, and the first impossible footsteps.